All right, so welcome back. We're going to do today, hopefully you had a chance to look at the solving inequalities video. If you didn't, then I'm going to do a starter here that hopefully will help you kind of catch up a little bit. You can also look back at that video from today, which is the 24th, and yesterday, which was the 23rd. So that you can kind of have an idea how to solve inequalities. All right, so today we're going to begin with a starter, just so that you can kind of catch up if you weren't able to use IXL or if you didn't quite understand what was happening or what the last lesson, so that you can kind of practice these and then you can see kind of how to complete them. So the first question on the starter is negative 7x is greater than 49. Second question is 1/3 x is less than 2. Third question is 27 is less than 3/2 x. The fourth question is 12 minus 9x is greater than 45. And the final question is, I guess that would be number 5, is 1/5, negative 1/5 x minus 14 is less than or equal to 22. So if you want to try these on your own, you can kind of stop the video now, pause it, and that way you could practice them before I go ahead and solve them. If you're still feeling like you're not understanding this or you didn't have a chance to look at the previous video, then go ahead and stick with us and I'll go over how to solve these. So for the first question, which is negative 7x is greater than 49. So in this case, if it was negative 7x equals 49, you would just divide by negative 7. That's the same thing you do here. Divide both sides by that negative 7. And in this case, because we divided by a negative, we're going to flip the symbol around. Remember, you flip the symbol around if you divide or multiply by a negative. So 49 divided by negative 7 is negative 7, and that is my answer. X is less than negative 7. Okay? So now the second question is one where we have a fraction that we need to get rid of, so 1/3. And remember from the previous lesson, you're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So in this case, you would multiply both sides by 3/1. Okay, so you multiply the 1/3 by 3/1. Then you have x is, in this case, we did not multiply by a negative, so x is less than, and 2 times 3 is 6, divided by 1 is just 1, or you could write that as 6/1, or in this case, x is still just less than 6. Okay, so there's my second answer. X is less than 6. And the third question, it's flipped around, and be careful about how you flip it. If you are one of those people who prefers to flip it, then you would have to write 3/2 x. But in this case, you would have to flip the symbol before you do the problem, is greater than 27. I prefer to leave it alone, only because I think flipping the symbol is a little confusing unless I have to. So I need to get rid of that 3/2 next to the x. I would multiply that by the reciprocal, which is 2/3. I would also do that on this side. Now, I did not multiply by a negative, so I'm going to leave my symbol alone. On this side, I'll have the x left because 2 times 3 is 6 and 3 times 2 is 6, so this is just 6/6x or 1x. But on this side, I'd have 27 divided by 3, which is 9, times 2, which is 18. So you can think of that this way. 27 divided by 3 is 9. 9 times 2 is 18. Or, of course, you could just multiply that as two fractions. 2/3 times 27/1, which in this case is 54/3, which is also 18. Okay? Either way you want to go with that is fine, but my final answer is 18 is less than x. Now, if I wanted to graph that, I would have to flip it. It would actually be x is greater than 18. So be careful there. That's kind of a tricky little thing that happens every once in a while, but it's not super important in general. So don't worry too much about that. I'll try to avoid throwing in too many of those problems. So on this one, this is a little bit trickier. It has two steps. Now, if this said 12 minus 9x equaled 45, like it normally could, then we would subtract the 12, which is exactly what we will do here. On both sides, we're going to subtract the 12. So 12 minus 12, there is nothing there. So I now have a negative 9x. And because I didn't actually multiply or divide by a negative, I only subtracted a number, I'm going to leave that alone. 45 minus 12 is 33. Okay, now the next step, however, is going to be that I divide by that negative 9. So now I am going to flip that symbol. So what was a greater than is now a less than. Okay, and then I'm going to do x is less than negative 33 over 9. I'd like to put the negative in the numerator. I'd also prefer if you actually reduce that fraction, so it would be negative 11 over 3. Okay, so there's the answers for that one. And then the very last question, number 5, is negative 1/5 x minus 14 is less than or equal to 22. Now, let me give you a couple of suggestions here. Don't worry too much about the negatives right away, just realize you do the opposite. So in this case, negative 1/5 x minus 14, if that equaled 22, well, I would just add the 14. So that's what I do here. Just going to add that 14. Okay, now I added a number, so I'm not going to flip the symbol. So negative 1/5 x is less than or equal to, in this case, 36. Okay, but now when I'm dealing with a negative 1/5, as we did when we were multiplying by fractions, or dealing with fractions, when we divide by a negative 1/5, we have to multiply by the reciprocal. So you're going to multiply by negative 5 over 1. Okay, it's the same as dividing by a fraction. We multiply by the reciprocal. So in this case, x is less than or equal. In this case, we do 5 times 36, and 5 times 36 is 180. But, I'm sorry, it's not x is less than or equal. We do have to flip that symbol. X is greater than or equal to negative 180. Sorry about that. I was going too quickly there. So in this case, we flipped the symbol once we divided by a negative, when we multiplied by a negative. Okay, so don't forget, when you multiply or divide by a negative, you flip the symbol. Okay, so today what we'll be doing is graphing these types of problems. So we'll be doing ones where we don't have to solve, and then ones where we're also solving. And then your practice work will be non-IXL, because the IXL has been giving a lot of people some trouble. So I'm just going to put a sheet there that you can work on. All right, so let's start with just reminders as to graphing inequalities. So you did this last year with Miss Church, but it will have been a while. So when we're graphing inequalities, just in general. So the first rule is when we're doing these all on a number line, none of these will be on anything other than a number line. Okay, so we're going to do these on a number line. The first rule is for greater than or less than. So notice these are the non-equal to versions. We use an open symbol on the number. An open circle on the number. Okay, so for example, so if I'm graphing x is less than 3, let's say. Okay, so here's my number line, and I'm going to do it in a different color. Hopefully that's relatively easy to see. Okay, so here's my number line. So I might have negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, keep going, 2, and 3. Okay, so I have this long number line, and then so anything in this direction is going to be less than 3. 2 is less than 3, 1 is less than 3, 0 is less than 3. In fact, anything in here, in between 2 and 3, is also less than 3. So, but 3 itself is not less than 3. So what we do there is we make an open circle. So that open circle shows that we're not actually including the 3. So 3 isn't included. But everything less than is. So we would either, some people do it right above and show that like and some people color it in. Either way is fine with me. If you show that above all of that is included, or if you literally color in the entire line, I'll show that in a different color. You can color in the line and show that it is, all those things are not included. Okay? But the important thing is that that open circle is on the 3, which shows that 3 is not included. Okay? Now, if we do an x is greater than, let's say x is greater than -2. Okay? So we'll again do a graph here. Okay, and let's just start 1 below this time. Okay, so there's our number line. And now what I need to deal with is that -2 spot, but again, it's just a greater than. So x is greater than -2. So because there's no equal, I have an open circle. And of course, everything to the right now is what we're going to include because we're saying x is greater than -2. And everything here is greater than. So we would either draw a line here or we would color it in. So again, right here, all of that section there that is greater than. Because all of these things, -1, 0, 1, etc., are all in the greater than section. All right, so that's a reminder of what we do with less than or greater than. Now, we'll look at if we include equal. So for less than or equal or greater than or equal, we use what's called a closed circle. On the number. Okay. So using the same examples as above, but now including the equal to. So let's, for example, let's do x is less than or equal to 3. And I'll make a better number line this time, maybe not quite as far down, or give a little bit more room. So if we start at -3, I'll give a little more room this time. There we go. So again, everything in this direction is less than 3, but now we're including the 3. So what we do is we put what's called a closed circle. So really it's just a colored in circle. We just actually color it in. And either, again, you can draw the line above, or you may actually like thicken in the line. It is completely up to you. Some people even include the symbol up above, so like you would have the colored in portion and everything up above. That's fine with me as well, just as long as I see you kind of understand what is going on here. So in this case, there you go. So it's less than or equal to 3. Okay, and same thing with a greater than or equal. So using this same problem up above, but now we're going to be greater than or equal. Okay, so again, we'll draw our number line. And in this case, I would now do -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, let's say. Okay, but this time, because it's greater than or equal to -2, everything to this right-hand side is greater than, but we would color it in because it's also can be equal to -2, so it includes the -2, and then color in this whole section, or if you prefer, put the line there that you color in and do it above like that. Either one is fine with me. But make sure that it's clear that that's fully colored in and that you're including that -2. All right, so a couple more examples, but these just kind of for solving and graphing. So let me give you a couple of graphing examples, and you can pause it and practice for yourself, and then we'll solve and graph. So I'll give you all 4 of those examples, and then when you're ready. So we'll solve and graph depending on the problem. So the first 2 problems will just be graphing. So x is greater than, let's say, 1. And the second problem, x is less than or equal to negative 3, let's say. Okay, and then for the solving problems that you would actually have to solve and graph, so the third one is 2x plus 8 is less than or equal to 20. And the fourth problem is 12 minus 5x is, let's say, greater than negative 13. Okay. So if you want to practice these on your own, please, again, stop the tape and practice them first. But if you want to just kind of follow along, that's fine as well. So it says x is greater than 1. So I'm going to start this at negative 1. There's no real rule as to where you start the number line. I just like to include one number above and one number below. Now, as it's greater than 1, I have to have an open circle on the 1. And then, of course, I have to go to the right because it's greater than 1. I want to be careful about, telling you to go the direction of the arrow because that can be a little bit misleading if the x is on the other side, if the x is not on the left-hand side. But as long as you read it correctly, x is greater than 1, then this would be kind of where you would draw that. And then the arrow is filled in because it continues. It's also, again, fine if you draw it up here and the arrow, as long as I can tell it's meant to be on the 1. Okay, then the next one, x is less than or equal to negative 3. So I am going to include 0, but I'm not going to include any positives here, just to make sure I can fit everything on my number line. Okay, so it says x is less than or equal to negative 3. So I'm going to make a closed circle on the negative 3, of course. And then less than or equal would mean it goes in, the equal was, of course, the closed circle. The less than would mean it goes in this direction, any direction that's less than negative 3, so lower than negative 3. Again, up here, coloring in would be fine. And drawing that in that way would also be fine. Okay? So now with solving and graphing, I think the first thing always to do is to solve the problem in the first place. So if this said 2x plus 8 equaled 20, we would subtract 8 first, which is, of course, what we do as well. Here, there is no difference unless I divide by a negative. So now I have 2x is less than or equal to 20 minus 8, which is 12. My last step would be to divide by 2. Of course, I didn't leave myself quite enough room, but x is less than or equal to 12 divided by 2 is 6. Okay, so this solution is what I'm going to graph. Okay, so over here, I will now have my number line, and I'm going to make sure I have enough room, so I may not actually have a 0 here, which is, again, fine. Okay, and then this says x is less than or equal to 6, excuse me. So I need the equal to, so I need to color in that number line, or the spot on the number line. Okay, the 6, and then I will go less than or equal to. So the or equal to was, again, the coloring in, and the less than is everything in this direction. And of course, if you prefer to go up here and do it that way, that is fine, as long as I understand what you're doing. Okay, last problem. Now this one's probably the trickiest, although it just has some more steps as far as remembering all of the things. And this is about as hard as this is going to get. So we're going to subtract 12 from both sides, because that's the same thing you would do if these were equal to. Now when I subtract, I do not switch the symbol. So negative 13 minus 12 is negative 25. But my second step is to divide by negative 5. And when I divide by a negative, I do flip the symbol. So this becomes x is less than, and negative 25 divided by negative 5 is a positive 5. So my actual solution is x is less than 5. Okay, so that's what I'm going to graph. So I'm going to probably start at like 2. But I like to include a little above and a little below the number. It's not a terribly big deal that these are all evenly spaced. So then less than will be an open circle on that side. And then again, because we're less than, we go below the number and not above the number. So there is the last problem. I am going to have a Zoom office hour tomorrow, as well as all of my office hours that actually a Zoom the next 3 days. But if you feel like you need face-to-face time, then I'm going to have that available. I'll send a message about that as well. But also remember, you can always call or email if you have questions about any of the problems at all times. This time, because the IXL was not working quite for everyone, I'm going to assign another work on a sheet so that you can just send back the practice that you've done on that sheet. All right, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day, and hopefully I will see you sooner rather than later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.